Hey everybody, it's D from D&D Ditches, and today the D stands for December 25th. Wait, isn't that Christmas Day? Yes it is. Let's open some presents together. We have the AD&D 2nd edition deluxe adventure box set Night Below and Underdark campaign. It says on the box the ultimate dungeon adventure. This box set was released in 1995 and is a bit of a holy grail of 2nd edition adventures. 2nd edition is not really known for its adventures. A lot of the 2e adventures have a reputation of being very railroady, but Night Below seems to be a bit of a fan favorite. I know that Matthew Colville has talked about it quite a lot on his channel. Back in the day, this box retailed for just $30 US. I know that's probably a lot of money, but for what you get, this box set is insanely good value for money. So on my mate Gazza Mitchell's channel, he's actually made 2 videos talking about this campaign, as he's ran this adventure a couple of times. I'm going to put a link to his video in the description, so you can go and check it out and show him some love. These are the 3 booklets, but they're a bit thicker than some of the other box sets. It feels like this was printed on some premium grade paper. The paper stock is quite thick. And these are all the miscellaneous stuff that came with the box set. We're going to take a look at the auxiliary stuff first. This is the Monstrous Compendium supplement that it came with. I've talked about in my previous videos that 1995 was when the revised 2nd edition Monstrous Compendium came out. Prior to that, they released the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual in a ring binder format. And this Monstrous Compendium supplement would have been released as loose leaf with holes punched into them, so you can add them into your ring binder. I did an unboxing video a couple of months ago and it included the adventure Dragon Mountain. And in that box, all the monsters came in individual sheets, and lo and behold, 4 of them were missing. One positive with releasing the monsters in a booklet format is so that none of these can go missing. So Night Below is an adventure which takes place in the Underdark, and you're fighting a lot of monsters that are typically associated with the Underdark. I mean, if you look at the cover, you have the Kuotor, the Mind Flayer, this looks like a Dero or a Dorgar, and some kind of Eldritch Horror tentacle monster. It might even be this Savant Aboleth that's introduced in this Monstrous Compendium. And then we have the 8 Dungeon Master reference cards. These should be double-sided. This one's not, but this one is. So they are labeled and numbered. The first one shows a bunch of tiles. This could be part of a puzzle or something that the players encounter in the game. And then we have a map of Milbourne. This looks like a village. Each of the buildings are marked. We have the warehouses, the temple, the Carmen Mansion, the folly on the Churnet River. And on the back, it seems like there is a map for another village called Thurmaster. The next card shows the hazards of the Underdark, such as fungal hazards, glass rock, ledgeways, oozes. These symbols probably refers to the markings that's on the map. We're going to have a look at the map a little bit later on. And then we have the City of Glasspool monster roster. And on the back, we have the social collapse point system. This seems like some kind of a subsystem that's being used in this game, which is quite interesting. And then we have some artwork on some of the monsters. And then on the back, we have some information on the Blood Queen and Ilzendrin. These must be the new gods that's introduced in this module. The Blood Queen is referred to as an intermediate power and Ilzendrin referred to as a lesser power. So gods in 2nd edition are referred to as powers. This is a Planescape term, but I think also 2nd edition, they were also trying to move away from the idea of gods and demons. A lot of the words were changed. And gods are also graded on their power level. So you have lesser power, intermediate power, and greater power. Then there are implications when it comes to their priesthood or their clerics, because they can only grant up to a certain level of priest spells. I think lesser powers might only be able to grant up to 5th level priest spells, something like that, but most people that I know don't actually use that rule. And then we have this giant slug-like monster, is referred to as the Grand Savant. And then cards 7 and 8, we have some monsters that's depicted in a top-down view. They're probably intended for you to cut these out so you can place them on the map like miniatures. But usually they would have lines or dots punched into these cardboard so you'll be able to punch out these figures easier. But these pieces of cardboard are completely smooth, so I guess the intent is that you will cut them out with scissors. And on the back we have the same artwork except it's in black and white. So I guess you can flip the cardboard over to depict that the monster has been slain. And then we have some player handouts. Now these are just photocopied in regular paper. So the first one are the 2 villages that we looked at. And then there are some description of some places, some dungeon maps. These look like items that your players could find. And then we also have a letter. There's an indoor map layout. There is another map. More letters. More items. More maps. Now this one looks really interesting. I guess it's intended to be used with this diagram. So it seems like this is a bit of a puzzle, and here are the key. And it's up to the players to use the translation to figure out what this means. I love puzzles like this because you're actually challenging the player and getting them engaged, rather than them just rolling dice and let their characters do everything. And then let's take a look at the maps. So these maps are double-sided, and they feature multiple maps of caverns on a single poster. For example, the Deranged Darrow, the Ancient Tomb, the Sunless Sea, Rift of the Fire Giants, and there are some interesting ones on this side. The Isle of Shadows, Pyramid of Ixzan, and the Great Shabboth. And on the back, there are even more maps of indoor areas, and this is a tactical map of a round circular. This looks like the Grand Surveillance Tower. So you can use this grid for combat using miniatures or the cardboard cutout of the monsters that we just saw. The second map features more caverns. There is a Svervnebland city maze. Svervnebland is also the name of deep gnomes. It's a very difficult name to pronounce. And there are some more city maps over here. There is the city of the glass pool. And on the back is another battle map. This seems to show the whole of a temple or a cult. Clearly this is where the cult leader is supposed to be. Also notice the giant octopus. And this is the third map. So the back of the box did say 6 maps. But given that these posters are double-sided, that's actually what they're referring to. It's not 6 sheets. I've just checked. This is actually complete. We have another tactical map of a room. We have the map of the region of Highmoor that this adventure takes place in. There is the village of Milbourne and also Thurmaster. More cavern maps, and this one depicts the strategic underground passage map, where it shows the different passages leading to and from. And then there are more maps on the back with another tactical map of some kind of a tunnel. Let's go through the books. So the first one is called The Evils of Heronshire, and on the inside we have a map of the Heronshire region. It's included here for your reference. So this adventure will take you from level 1 all the way up to 10 and above. So by the third book you should actually be at level 10, so this would actually take you beyond level 10. This section gives you the synopsis of this adventure. So essentially the Aboleth Savants, these tentacle monsters that we just looked at, they are constructing a magical artifact called the Tower of Domination. This artifact, if completed, will allow them to use their domination over hundreds of miles, allowing them to subdue all surface creatures. But to create this artifact, they must sacrifice as many magic using creatures as possible. So they're using their minions to kidnap as many mages and clerics as possible on the surface and bringing them underground. But they're capturing anything and everything, hoping there's at least going to be some spellcasters in the mix. And for any of the non-spellcasters, they're just going to use them for slave labor. So it says here that the ideal group should have between 4 to 6 characters between 1st and 2nd level when they start. And it does say if there are fewer than 6 PCs that they should have henchmen with them. So they really want you to have a high number of characters in this game, as I heard that there's quite a lot of combat in this. And the adventure starts here where it says capture them alive. Clearly this is some kind of an ambush. And after that you make your way to the village of Milbourne. And then halfway through the first book we have the Gazetteer of Heronshire and a list of different locations that you can visit, a description on them, as it seemed like this is the part of the game where you can run it as a bit of a sandbox. I remember in Gazza Mitchell's video, he did talk about this adventure having a lot of encounters, because this adventure does expect you to be of a certain level at a certain point so you can survive the combat encounters later on. So it seems like you're really encouraged to run as many of these encounters as possible so that the players can get the experience that they will need to survive later on. So it seems like in the first book, this is more of an overland sandbox adventure where you get to travel around and explore the region. And just like the back of the book said, you can slot this region into any fantasy world of your choosing. It can fit into Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or any fantasy setting really. And on the back cover we have some random encounter tables for the different regions that you can explore. Book 2 is called Perils of the Underdark, and on the inside cover we have an Underdark map, and it features some of the places that you can visit, such as the Darrow Warrens, the Swerveneplan City Maze, Caves of the Slime Lord, Halls of the Rockseers. And remember the reference sheet that we looked at with the different types of hazards? This map is where they show up. So book 2 takes you underground into the Underdark, and it is explained that there are still 2 phases during this book. The first part is a sandbox adventure where you are able to visit the different places in the Underdark for treasure or experience, and you are also able to return to the surface at any time as well. It does not place any restrictions on that. But at some point the story moves forward, and that's a bit of a point of no return. It even says in the book that they should collect every experience point they can, they'll need it. Which further emphasizes what I said earlier, that there's going to be a lot more combat coming up, and your player characters really need to be a certain level to really have a reasonable chance of surviving some of these monsters. You can see the artwork shows encounters with trolls, and we also have the Grell Nest. And there are more monster encounters. This look like hook horrors, as it's stated here. And some of the other monsters include the Quaggoth and a Spectre, super scary undead monster capable level drain. We have oozes, jellies, slimes, rakshasa. You see how many monsters there are? Half of these pages are taken up by monster stat blocks. And then there is even a dragon. And there is the aboleth with a Darrow. And again, just remembering Gazza Mitchell's video where he said that after a certain point the characters are not able to return and they're kind of stuck in the Underdark. And he also said that this campaign is quite long and there are going to be times where you're stuck in the Underdark for months in real life at a time. So unless you're really invested in this campaign, it could actually get to a point where it gets a bit stale. It's like, oh, it's more Underdark. And there might even be times where you're like, oh, I just want to do something else and visit something else just for a change. So keep that in mind. And on the back of the second book is another random encounter table. And the last book is called The Sunless Sea, and on the inside we have a map of the Sunless Sea. This seems to be a body of water that is in the Underdark. So it says that at the start of book 3 that your player characters should be between 9th and 11th level. And we are only 2/3 of the way through this adventure. So I'm thinking that you're probably going to be level 13 or 14 at the end of this. And in this book, your player characters are exploring the deep Underdark, so this is even deeper than the regular Underdark. It seems like there's still a bit of a sandbox section because it allows you to explore the Great Caverns and also the different isles of the Sunless Sea. Again, you probably want all of the experience points and all of the treasures that you can get before you progress with the final encounter. Here's that piece of artwork again, but this time they've also included the Illithid. So you've got some encounter with the giants as well. These seems like some of the NPCs that you'll meet. There is the Illithid again. And there are some super evil looking characters. And then there's the Kuotoa. And this section still outlines the different islands that you can visit. And from here onwards leads to the final encounter. And on the inside of the back cover is another random encounter table. And we have another box from Noble Knight Games. At this point I'm shopping there so often they should give me frequent flyer miles. First up, we're going to take a look at the Mystara box set called Karameikos Kingdom of Adventure. In last month's unboxing, I looked at the Mystara box set called Galantry, and I mentioned in that video that Karameikos is the other one. So once again, Mystara is the default setting used in Basic and BECMI. There were a few BECMI products that were released which covered Karameikos previously, such as the product line called the Gazza series. So in this box set, Karameikos gets adapted into Advanced 2nd Edition. So the contents are quite similar to the Galantry box. Now this was released in 1994. Noble Knight Games had this listed with the box being in fair condition and the interior contents are excellent condition. Now this is the first product that I've ever purchased from Noble Knights where the condition is fair. Previously, I've only ever gone for very good or excellent condition, so this is what is considered fair, which is actually not bad. There are box sets that I bought that costed more and are in worse condition than this, so I feel like this is a pretty good deal. Okay, let's take a look at the poster map first of all. So on the poster map, we have first of all Miros, the capital city of Karameikos, with the different districts being color-coded. There is the threshold, and then the larger map of the known world. Prior to this setting being called Mystara, it was known as the known world. And these are the different kingdoms presented in a hex map format, the different roads and pathways. The Principalities of Galantry, which we looked at last month, is located over here, while the Kingdom of Karameikos is down here. And it says here down in the bottom that 1 hex equals 24 miles. This map will be appropriate if you want to do hex crawling and overland exploration, as the different terrains and topography has been broken down with the key that's listed up here. And this is the second map, which is a far larger and zoomed in version of the hex map from the previous poster. So it is specifically zoomed in on Karameikos itself. So if you're doing hex crawl traveling within the region, this would be the map to use. But I guess if you want to be traveling to internationally and to the other kingdoms, the other map that you will use, it says up here, the scale is 1 hex equal 8 miles, whereas the other map was 24 miles. I'll just move this up a bit so you can see what's below. There are several islands that are also featured in the Sea of Dread. And these are the handouts that we will give out to the players. They are also numbered. I'm just going to put them in order real quick. We have an interior of what looks like a tavern called the Juggling Ogre. The alley between some city streets. We have a map of the cellar. In the center of the cavern looms a ziggurat completely surrounded by water. So this is clearly intended to give you a visual of something that's happening in a cavern. The map to Elton Spring itself, map to the Druid's Cottage, and this looks like the Druid's Cottage. The Hag's Glen, this looks like a wanted poster, the Kingdom's Call to Arms, and also there is another flyer. And then there is some marketing material. Okay, and here are the rest of the content. So there is the audio CD. There is a crack on the case. Some of these character cards are bent. The books themselves are also bent at the corners. I don't know if I would call these contents in excellent condition. Seems like the box is a little bit better than expected, but the books are worse than expected. But anywho, let's have a look at the pre-generated characters. There's Emily Rogueshot, the Halfling Thief. Her stats are presented on the card, and on the back are her thieving abilities and also a backstory. This is pretty much identical to the Galantry box set and how that was presented. There's Parthena, the Human Cleric. Jocasta Demandria, the Human Fighter. Calroth, the Almost Dangerous, the Human Wizard. Maxala Trigostas, the Human Cleric. Chad Alonius, the Human Thief. Melissa Moonstar, the Elven Wizard. You can see that there are some pen markings on here. Somebody was probably a little bit bored when they were playing. On what planet is this excellent? And the last one is Darga Thunderhammer, the Dwarven Fighter. So the two books left, we have the Explorer's Guide and also the Adventure book. Again, this is pretty much how Galantry was presented. Let's have a look at this lore book first of all. The book begins with the lay of the land, And it talks about the land, the flora, the vegetation, the water, the resources, the towns and villages. Chapter 2 is the history of Karameikos. This is a very brief chapter, about 6 pages or so, and then we move on to the society of the different cultures and the different peoples. And there is a royal family tree. And then it moves on to cities and towns, with the different cities having its own heraldic emblem. So this is talking about the different amenities and the laws of the cities. And then the next chapter is personality. So this would be the different NPCs, starting from the king and queen. There's the royal family. And the different noble families. This is a fairly long section, so if you want to do a lot of kingdom intrigue and politics and that kind of stuff. But if that's what you want to play, maybe try the birthright setting. And then beyond the borders. These write-ups give you a very brief summary of the surrounding kingdoms and other places in this world. Glantree would go and get its own expansion box. The other ones, not so much in Advanced 2nd edition, but I'm sure you can go back to the Gazetteer series and you'll be able to find a lot more information in some of these countries. There is the world map. So I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to Known World and Mystara, as I've never played Backme or Basic, so I never had any of that nostalgia. I'm sure you'll be able to find other videos on YouTube that's going to go into this setting in far more depth than I can. So at the end, we have some character creation options for creating a character in Karameikos, including wealth and status, as well as human heritage, as there are 2 lines of humans which resided in this country. So it seems like when you're creating a character, there is a chance that your character could actually be a noble or related to one of these noble families of some type. And then we have kits and proficiencies with some warrior and rogue kits. And then also wizard kits. And then finally the priest kits. And then to finish this book off, we have the Karameikan calendar and some random encounter tables. And then the last book that we're going to look at is the adventure book. This is, I believe, 32 pages. So once again, the audio CD which has been provided has been designed to accompany this adventure. There is the disc itself, and on the back it lists some of the other adventures that also came with an audio CD. So with all of the AD&D 2nd edition Mystara adventures, they all came with an audio CD. And I guess they were designed to be more of a premium quality adventure with audio and visual aids. Seems like that's what they were trying to go for with this line of adventures. So you come to a part of the adventure where it will say play track 2, and the description will say a crowd of townspeople run outside to find a woman named Saladina who has been attacked and needs healing. She tells everyone that her husband, a merchant named Justa Daneworth, has been kidnapped. She begs for someone to rescue him. And then you will go and play track 2, which will have the voice actor lines of, I suspect, Saladina, who is going to plead for help with the PCs. So the first adventure is called Trouble on Threshold. So it opens with 3 new wizard spells: Comprehend Languages, Alarm, and Permanency. Now, anybody who read through the 2nd edition player handbook will tell you that all 3 spells appeared in that book. So why are these considered new magic? Well, reading through the description, there was another 2nd edition box set called First Quest, which was also known as the Introductory Adventure. So that would have been the 2nd edition versions of the starter box as they have in 5th edition these days, because it was intended to be a starter adventure that's going to ease a newcomer newcomer into this world of AD&D. So included in that box set was a mini player's handbook and a mini dungeon master's guide that was like a truncated version of the real book. So these 3 spells did not appear in that player handbook, and that's why they're being introduced in this book as new spells. So reading into this, it seems like the strategy was that the first quest box was supposed to get a newcomer into this hobby, and Karameikos will potentially be the recommended second box that they would pick up. So I don't own first quest. I might pick it up one of these days and check it out myself, but it seems like that box was set in Mystara. So the adventure starts with a kidnapping, and track 2, which is what I read out previously, with Saladina. And then we have some interior maps on where the adventure starts, and what looks like an underground map of the region. So clearly the first thing to do is to search the vicinity. And of course, we're going to run into rats and spiders, 2 of the most quintessential Dungeons & Dragons starter monsters that you're going to face. Seems like the adventure will lead you deeper underground, the waterfall, and then secret room with the river. And it seems like at the end you rescue the man who got kidnapped, and that's when you wrap up the adventure. And the second adventure is called The Sound of Madness. Once again, we have new magic, or more so, these are actually magic items, the wand of polymorphing and hornal blasting. They were featured in the Dungeon Master Guide, but obviously in the first quest box set, the Dungeon Master Guide that was included was not that comprehensive, so those items were clearly not listed. So this adventure once again starts in the Tavern Juggling Ogre. You meet this NPC called Elena. She explains that she's been in love with a druid who lives near Elton Spring, but she hasn't heard anything from him in a while, and the last few people that she sent have not returned. So obviously she's going to offer you that quest. And as you journey to Elton Spring, these all relate to the player handouts that we looked at previously with the maps of the Druid's Grove and Elton Spring. And of course a hag is involved. We already saw that with the handouts. And then the adventure wraps up nicely. The hag stat block has been provided for you for your convenience. So there you go, that's 2 separate adventures that's included in this book. I believe the Glantree box set just contained 1 single adventure, but obviously that one's longer. Let's move on to the next Mystara product called the Player Survival Kit. So this appears to be a little bit banged up, and it was released in 1995. I've never actually seen this product in the wild before. I thought it came in a box set because I thought all of the Mystara 2nd edition products came in a box set. But it's just a slipcover. So as I mentioned previously, there was the box set called First Quest, which was the beginner's box. So this set was obviously designed to be some sort of a starter kit for player characters who recently got into the hobby of Dungeons & Dragons, introduced by the First Quest box. And it's there to foster player engagement and really get them invested in their player characters. So these bits and pieces are all over the shop. I'll just organize them a little bit. So let's have a look at the miscellaneous stuff first. So this is a bill for now hiring wanted race alignment character classes. Seems like a bit of a prop. This could be a job listing that is posted to a tavern. I do notice that down the bottom it says no orcs need apply. I get that in the spirit of the game, especially back in the 90s, but I think these days that's going to come off a little bit off color. But I get it, it's just a bit of fun. This is the diploma from the Karameikos School of Magecraft. Again, a cute prop. And from the Great School of Magic Lantry, with the different subjects, and if you can fill in the grades in the comments, this could be a fun little gag. Some of the subjects include enunciation, well, I definitely need that, somatics, theoretical metaphysics, history of magic, and the dean from the different schools of magic has also signed this report card as well, so this is really immersive when it comes to the flavor side of things. This is from the Church of Karameikos, saying, having sworn the most solemn oath to uphold, serve, and protect the church, the people, the nation, is hereby proclaimed a knight of the most right and excellent order of the Griffin. So this would be something that you would give to a paladin player. This is a letter of marque adventuring group and corporation paper. It's coming from the Minister of State, and it says that by the authority vested in me by our beloved king, I hereby declare that the undersigned are officially recognized as adventurers at large and charge them to support the realm. Once again, another neat little prop that you can use for role-playing purposes. This is the last will and testament for your player characters, and they can fill in the blanks and leave their worldly possessions to their family, friends, or whoever. So this is really interesting. The letter of credit is actually printed on the back of the will. So this piece of document is for when somebody takes out a loan. It says from the Bank of Darokin. Now I find this hilarious, the fact that it's printed on the back of the will. I do not know if this is deliberate. Is somebody in TSR just having a laugh and this is a bit of a joke? I work in banking in my day job, so this is kind of my industry. So what this is saying to me is that the bank has actually wrote the letter of credit on the back of someone's will. And how I'm reading into this is that they're actually taking the will as collateral for the loan. As in, if you do not pay back the loan, well, we own the will and all of your worldly possessions. I don't know if this is how the creator of this product intended it. I think this is ingenious and also evil at the same time. So the next one is Family Matters. This looks like a randomly generated family chart. You roll a d4 for character class. Priests, rogues, warriors, and wizards are the 4 character archetypes in 2nd edition. Once you get the archetype, you roll another d6 to have a further breakdown of the exact character class. And then you roll a d6 for homeland, which also known as the different races, and based on that, it further breaks down. And then for humans, you roll another d8, and that's going to give you the kingdom that you're from. So I guess this would be where your family is from. And then on the back, you have the other races, elf, dwarf, halflings, so on. And then your parents' profession on a d100 further breaks down to the exact profession. For example, could be an innkeeper or a town crier. And then your parents' living status, living, missing, deceased, cause of death, your siblings. And cause of death is continued on next page. I guess they just ran out of room. This is quite extensive. For example, you have the different type of diseases like rabies or pneumonia, and unnatural cause of death like being executed, such as beheaded or burnt at stake, murdered, and supernatural cause of death, including becoming undead, and then roll a d20 on the type of undead. I love this. And if you get a 20, well, guess what? Your family just became a lich. And I think this is really ingenious and a really fun way to just generate your character's backstory and where your family's from, what happened to them, and then based on that, you could actually come up with your character's backstory and your personality. I mean, for example, your father became a lich, so therefore maybe you decided to become a paladin instead because you feel a certain type of way about the undead, and you join the church because you want to put your father to rest one day. And then step parents and fostering, your character's spouse, children, and other relatives, whether you are a legitimate or illegitimate child, and twins. This is hilarious. I love this. Okay, and the next page is rules for specialist wizards. Now, all of these rules are included in the 2nd edition player's handbook, but like I mentioned, this product is really designed for someone who's only played the starter box, so they may not be privy to all of these rules. And once again, the mage spells of the different magical schools. And then master weapon charts, including the cost, size, speed factor, and damage. All of this, again, is in the player's handbook. I do like the artwork. Newcomers to this hobby might not actually know what a rapier or a halberd looks like. There's the man catcher. I've always wondered what it looks like. Thank you, player survival kit. There's more illustrations on weapons and sketches on wizards, thief characters, warriors, and clerics. Is there to give you some examples and inspiration on what you want your character to look like. There is a map of Glantry and Karameikos and Darokin. Okay, so it turns out that I can't count. Handouts 5, 6, and 7. So we had graduation certificates. We had a certificate of being sworn in by the church. Now this is the thieves' turn. This document is called Kingdom of Thieves, the bearer of this note having proven his or her worth and skill at our profession. And this is your evaluation on the different thief skills such as pickpocket or locksmith. Kind of like a report card, but this is for thieves instead. So I would imagine this is from the Thieves Guild. And then this is for the clerics. Cleric in good standing, Church of Traladara, which is the letter introducing the cleric player character from the Patriarch. And then the the same thing, but this is from the Church of Karameikos instead. So this is their rival organization. So that's it. These handouts are really fun. Had a bit of a laugh at the random family generation. I thought that was quite funny. I can definitely see how these props can make new players feel really invested in D&D. And then we have these are uncut cards. They're the Fame and Fortune cards. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Monopoly, like Chance. I'll park them aside for a sec. We'll have a look at the book and see if it explains what these cards are. So the Adventurer's Log. This is a scrapbook intended for you to write in, obviously. I have seen these books designed for new players for subsequent editions, like they're fairly popular with 5th edition. Luckily, no one has wrote in here before. So when you create a new character and create their backstory, which may or may not involve consulting the randomly generated family tables, you can write all of your details here. And then we have friends and allies. I guess these could be the other player characters at the table. There are 12 slots, so I imagine that they may or may not be from the same game. It's a way for you to keep track of your friends while you're playing D&D with them. And then this is your journal for places that you've explored, adventures that you've had, monsters fought, treasures gained, clues, mysteries, and instructions. So these would be clues for puzzles potentially, that you can just write the clues down to refer back to them at a later stage. And then Book of Days, which is a timeline of events you might want to chronicle your adventure. And foes on the back, this would be the villains. Judging by the artwork, this is clearly tailored at a younger player, someone who's a teenager, perhaps. I mean, most of us who started with 2nd edition were teenagers at the time, so this was definitely appropriate for our age range at the time. And then let's have a look at the Player Survival Kit character book. This is 16 pages. How to use this book. So using the Fame and Fortune cards. So it says this deck of 54 Fame and Fortune cards is an optional rule and they represent things similar to those found in the deck of many things. Oh lord. I don't know if that's such a good idea. Fame cards affect the ways characters interact. They show how a character's ever-increasing reputation creates new adventure opportunities, attracts new friends and followers, and sometimes make a PC the target of new foes. Fortune cards temporarily give a character a boost in luck or an ability. They're a manifestation of those twists of fate which cause a fatal arrow to be deflected by an item carried under the character's shirt, enable a hero to survive a death trap, or allow a truly epic villain to escape justice at the last moment. The DM has control of these cards, and at the start of the game, each player is allowed to draw one card. The DM may draw one card per level for the adventurer's major NPCs. So these cards are the aces up their sleeves. And it says in bold, the DM has the right to veto any card. So this really is like the chance card in Monopoly. You draw a card, could be good, could be bad, and if applicable, you could use it in the right situation. So let's have a look at some of these cards. So I don't know how you can tell the difference on what's a Fame and what's a Fortune card, but the first one says True Love Requited. You fall deeply in love with the person of your dreams. For now, there may be obstacles to your life together, but you feel confident that your beloved will wait faithfully for you until the happy times that you can spend the rest of your lives together. I don't understand what power this card is supposed to hold and how you're supposed to use this. Let's have a look at another one. Clue. This one looks like a good one. The character discovers an important clue that can help him or her unlock the villain's master plot. The significance of the clue may not be evident at the time it is found, but eventually it should enable the PC and his or her friends to solve the mystery. Again, this is really vague. I don't understand what it's supposed to do. Maybe when you're facing a mystery or a puzzle and you hold this card, you can whip it out and say, hey DM, I would like to use this. And maybe it's there to signify that at some point you would have actually came across a clue which was not important at the time. And maybe by using this card, you were able to tie this piece of clue to the objective at hand and I guess instantly solve the mystery. I'm kind of confused. If these are the quality of these cards, then it's not worth the cardboard that it's written on. If you played with these cards before, why don't you tell me about it down in the comments? Let me know whether they were good or fun or whether they were just a waste of time. So let's go back to the book. We have the dictionary of names. These are the different kingdoms and the appropriate names of males and females that could fit into that kingdom. So this would be good if you're trying to create a character and you want something that fits within the kingdom that you're from. And you can look through these lists of names and find something that you like. And then heraldry. So I think this is the part where the book helps you design your own heraldic emblem from your house. So it gives you the different types, the different colors, the different patterns. And then these are called devices, which are typically animals, dragons, lions. A lot of emblems in history actually use something that's quite reminiscent of this. But this book also gives you mythological monsters. For example, you could have the House of Medusa. And there you go. That's pretty fun, actually. Even though this is obviously written for younger players, I think there's still enough interesting things in here that an old man like myself would find something that's useful. Now let's move on to the next product, which of course is the Mystara Dungeon Master Survival Kit. So obviously the Dungeon Master Survival Kit is just like the Player Survival Kit, except this is made for Dungeon Masters. It was released in 1995, probably about the same time as the Player Survival Kit. Let's open this up and have a look. Once again, the cover slips off and there are multiple items in here once again. So we have the book which details the survival kit, the campaign log, some spare pieces of paper, we have the handouts and the cards. This kit contains pretty much the same kind of material as the Player Survival Kit. So let's have a look at the handouts first of all. The first one is a floor plan to a typical tavern or an inn, because we all know D&D adventure typically starts at a tavern. And on the back we have... This is descriptions of the various buildings in a village. However, the first site very clearly says sample tavern and inn. And if I look through the handouts, handout number 6 says sample village, and the number goes up to 13, the same as the key that's on the back of handout 1. So I don't know why they've done this. You would think that if you have a map on one side which describes a particular location, that on the back would be the description of the same map that is on the front, but apparently no. Apparently common sense was a little bit hard to come by in 1995. Instead, what you would have to do is look for the map that you want and then scour through the remaining pages trying to find the corresponding key for the map that you're looking at. Well, wouldn't you just think to put them on the same page? Who decided this? No wonder they went bankrupt. Anyway, handout 2 is a sample temple. As a typical D&D game, we'll also visit a temple at some point, and on the back it describes the castle. And page 3 is a sample monster lair, and on the back is the Wizard's Tower, which is handout number 4, which maps the Wizard's Tower, but on the back of that is the Monster's Cavern, which was handout 3, except the names are different because this one says sample monster lair, whereas the other one says sample monster's cavern. The amount of poor decisions in this product is doing my head in. So the next one is the sample castle, and on the back is the temple. And then we have the village, but on the back is the inn. And then the ones after are just blank parchments in various different styles. Hear ye, hear ye. Oh, and they're also double-sided as well. So you've got all of these different styles that you can use. You can use them to post different builds or different posters on bulletin boards, quest boards, job boards, and the like. And the sensible thing to do back in 1995 is to have these photocopied and then write on the photocopy as opposed to writing on the original. And then we have Dwarvish alphabet key. If you want to make Dwarven writing, maybe it's in a ruin. And on the back there's Elven alphabet or the magical alphabet. These are going to be quite useful for you if you want to design certain puzzles or certain ruins. Adventure synopsis. This is designed to help a fledgling DM in designing their own adventures. And here's a sheet for you to organize your monsters. And on the back we have treasures found and experience. And this sheet is for the DM to record their player stats. There was no such thing as D&D Beyond in 1995, so player will have their own character sheet. But the DM should always have access to your player stats just for quick reference or just looking up something. Or, and I hope you don't have to do this, looking to see if they're cheating. And the same thing for non-player characters, and then character sheets for NPCs, both minor and major. There are a little bit different. And then we move on to actual character record sheets, and they're divided into different character classes. So warrior, priest, wizard, and thief characters. So I would imagine each of these sheets are tailored designed for that character class. And then we have a template for you to create your own monsters, and also a random encounter table. So it seems like most of these handouts are really only going to help a fledgling DM who's only just starting off, and that's really the point of this product. Anybody who has a little bit of experience with DMing should already have most of these skills covered. Let's have a look at the campaign log. Members noble and illustrious, but this is just an empty page, but the artwork is exactly the same as the one from the Player Survival Guide. Companions loyal and valorous. Villains fell and fiendish. Monsters mighty and magical. Places explored and mysteries solved. Treasures priceless and magical. Events historical and significant. So this is really just a sketchbook. I wouldn't even say it's a notebook. And it's completely empty, which is a bit disappointing because at least with the players one, all of these pages were filled and lined and they had headings on there. Whereas in this case, you're just given blank paper, but guess what? You can also use actual blank paper. So it feels kind of pointless. Let's see if this little booklet is any good. So it explains how to use those handouts and the magical item cards, which are these. So these cards have an illustration on one side, for example, Common's Edge, Cat's Ring, Boots of the Five Winds. And on the back is a description of the item, facts, history, and rumors. Now this is made out of quite a flimsy cardstock. I don't know if you can see how thin that is. I wouldn't even call this cardboard. It's a cute idea, but I don't know how long they're going to last if you punch them out, especially if you don't have any way to actually store them. So let's have a look at the descriptions of one of these things. Which one did you want to look at? Let's have a look at the cat's ring, because we all like cats, don't we? Facts. This cursed ring absorbs all sound made by its wearer, rendering him or her totally silent and making speech impossible. It does, however, allow the wearer to hear and can't be removed so as long as its owner lives. This mysterious ring is currently worn by the young woman who calls herself Cat. She is an accomplished spy and sneak thief in Galantry City. As a youth, Cat was a promising mage, but her discovery of the ring made spellcasting almost impossible for her. In the wake of this tragedy, Cat turned to a crime and became a rogue, quickly learning to use the ring's curse of silence to her advantage. Rumors. Cat's body is really ruled by an evil intelligence in the ring itself. So I think that this one in particular is quite an interesting item, as it is cursed, but unlike other cursed items, there's actually an upside to this. And I also like that there is some history and the story involved in telling the tale of this item. And then each of these items are given a rumor, which is something that the Dungeon Master can use to expand upon and use it as a hook for further adventure. In this case, there might be an evil intelligence in the ring and it's a sentient item, and that could spawn a further adventure. So I quite like these. It gives the items quite a lot of personality. So we have 2 full pages of these magic items, and we have 4 pages worth of cards where there's artwork on one side and there is nothing on the other side. The book explains the other cards as it works with this new magic item called Deck of the Spheres, and guess what? We have another Deck of Many Things wannabe. So obviously you draw one of these cards and some of them are good and some of them are bad. If you want to use the Deck of Many Things, just use the Deck of Many Things. So the book goes into more detail about each of the cards, and then it teaches you about mapping. And then we have a section on the languages of Mystara, and each is given a paragraph on the writing, grammar, and punctuation. So it's mostly here to add a bit more flavor to your world. And we just saw in the handouts we had the scripts for Elvish and Dwarvish and a couple of other languages. So you can use that in your dungeon designs. Maybe there is a trap and there is a warning written in Dwarvish, and you need to decipher it. So overall, I think this product is okay. I definitely had more fun looking at the players one. Moving on, we have 2 products, and they're both Ravenloft adventures. We have From the Shadows and Roots of Evil, and we're going to talk about them together because they are related. The Ravenloft campaign setting came out in 1990 for 2nd edition AD&D. It was inspired by the original i6 Ravenloft module. It was adapted into future editions, including the 5e adaptation Curse of Strahd. So right after they released the original Ravenloft campaign setting, which was also known as a black box, they set up a meta storyline called the Grand Conjunction. So within the setting, there was a prophecy that was delivered. I believe it was called Hioska's Hexed. Hioska was the person's name, and Hexed refers to the prophecy, which contains 6 lines, or 6 sets of lines. And something really special is supposed to happen when the prophecies are fulfilled in order. Remember, in order. That's going to be really important. So the first 4 lines of the prophecy were individually fulfilled in 4 other adventures prior to these ones, and they were called Feast of Goblins, Ship of Horror, Night of the Walking Dead, and Touch of Death. Now, From the Shadows is part 5 of the prophecy, and Roots of Evil is part 6. So these 6 adventure modules, when combined, forms what is known as the Grand Conjunction adventures. So if you ever hear about people saying that they're going to run Ravenloft and they're going to go through Grand Conjunction, that's exactly what they meant. There is a bit of a problem with that. The adventures are written for different levels, and they're completely out of order. And there's a suggested quick and dirty fix on the internet, which is to change the order that you run the adventures so that the lowest level adventure is first, and then you change the order of the prophecy, because there are players, they don't know what the order is supposed to be anyway. So you can kind of do that and then do some bridge gap adventures between some of them just to make sure that you get your levels up, because both of these adventures for character levels 9 to 12, so you need to make sure that your characters have earned enough experience. So let's have a look at From the Shadows first. This was released in 1992, so it's still early on in the lifespan of Ravenloft. Now, it's impossible to talk about either of these adventures without spoiling Ravenloft and some of the major characters to some extent. So if you have not played Curse of Strahd or House of Strahd or the original Ravenloft or any iteration of that adventure, and you do not know the backstory of Strahd von Zarovich and you would like to keep it that way because maybe one of these days you're going to be able to play through Curse of Strahd or House of Strahd, then I would suggest that you skip this section. I'm going to put the timestamp on when you can skip to, because there's going to be massive spoilers for Strahd's story in both of these adventures. Now let's open this up. So once again, the cover comes off, and on the inside is a map to Castle Ravenloft. And then we also have a map for Castle Avernus. Now, Castle Avernus has nothing to do with Avernus being the first layer of Nine Hells of Beator. This is a place in Ravenloft. So the maps are depicted in an isometric style similar to the original i6 Ravenloft maps. And we have some tower maps over here as well. The adventure book is 64 pages, so this is quite a meaty adventure. There's a lot going on. So the adventure starts by giving you the background of what has happened previously on Ravenloft, kind of thing. At this point in time, the first 4 lines of the Hexed has been fulfilled. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about the lore of Ravenloft, but in the Domains of Dread, we have Strahd von Zarovich, who is the Dark Lord of Barovia, but Barovia is only one single domain, and there are dozens of other domains in this shadowy realm. The biggest domain is called Darkon. So Darkon is kind of like the Russia of the Domains of Dread. It is absolutely huge. And the Dark Lord of Darkon is a lich named Azalin. After the success of the original i6 Ravenloft module, Tracy and Laura Hickman, the authors of the original book, it was called Ravenloft 2, The House on Griffin Hill. It could be run as a sequel to Ravenloft, it could be run concurrently with Ravenloft, but in that adventure Strahd appeared, and he had like an apprentice or a trainee, and his name was Azalin, and that's supposed to be the same Azalin who is the Lord of Darkon. So within the Domains of Dread, these two absolutely hate each other. Now, Azalin is a lich, and his curse is that he's not able to learn any more spells, and it drives him absolutely insane. And he is working tirelessly day and night trying to find a way to escape Ravenloft. This will be like his greatest desire. He's always cooking up something. Now, he's very aware of Hioska's Hexed, because he realized that there's something special that's supposed to happen when the prophecy is fulfilled, is that he will be able to escape Ravenloft. I told you there was going to be spoilers in this. Now, Aslan's also very impatient. So in this point in time, the first 4 lines has been fulfilled. And then he's like, okay, well, I can't just sit around and wait. I'm going to take matters into my own hand and I'm going to force part 5 and then part 6 to happen. So where do you, the players, come in? The adventure starts with an encounter with a headless horseman. There's the artwork. That's pretty cool, right? Now, regardless of what happens, the players are then transported to the domain of Darkon, specifically the dungeon of Aslan Rex. And Aslan turns to you and says, well, looks like that you're in a bit of a precarious situation, aren't you? And at this point, the player has no real agency, and Aslan's going to ask, I'm using that term loosely, the party to do a little quest for him. And he says, I'm going to send you back in time 350 years ago. You are going to be wedding guests. Which wedding? Take a guess. And given that we're in Ravenloft, obviously the wedding is going to be the one between Sergei von Zarevich and Tatiana. So the quirk with this time travel is that Aslan doesn't actually send the players' bodies with them, they're only sending their minds. And in the past, they will inhabit the bodies of some wedding guests. The aim of this exercise, obviously, Aslan's trying to catch the moment before Strahd becomes the Dark Lord of Barovia, and he needs the party to retrieve some kind of artifact. And then when that's done, the players will actually be able to meet Hioska himself. And if this is the first time that the players encountered this hex set, it will be given to them, which is right here. And then at this point, the party gets to explore Castle Avernus. And apparently, it's pronounced Avernus. Apparently, Aslan's a bit of a hipster and he wants to be a little bit different. And this is a giant dungeon crawl. You saw the layout of this castle was absolutely massive. So I'm not going to say too much about the rest of the adventure. I think I've spoiled enough as it is. Obviously, I've not played this adventure. I've not even really read it in full. I just read bits and pieces of it. There was a time that I wanted to do the Grand Conjunction campaign, but then I realized, well, horror's probably not really for me. I'm not the right DM to run Ravenloft. I really enjoy the meta stories of Ravenloft, the stories and the tales of the different Dark Lords. But this is a setting that I don't feel like I have the right skills or the right stuff to really make it great because I don't really care for horror. So another complaint that you probably would have actually seen it coming is that the lack of agency when it comes to the player characters. The fact that no matter what they do, that they're railroaded into being captured and being forced into doing this thing. I think the overall payoff of both of these adventures is worth sacrificing a little bit of player agency, especially if the players have played through any version of Curse of Strahd and know Strahd's story. Like the fact that you're able to go back in time and be able to change the events in time, that's going to make them go, wow. So I would tell the players, hey, listen, I know that there's going to be part of the adventure where you don't really get to make a choice. But if you really like the story of Strahd and you really wanted to explore what Ravenloft storytelling could do, take a chance. I think the players are more likely to do that in Ravenloft because horror is really built on tropes. You know, like how many times have you seen a horror movie where it's starting to storm and there's a couple that's trapped in the wilderness and then there is a haunted mansion in the distance, and instead of braving the elements on the outside, they're going to take their chance in a haunted mansion. I mean, how many times have we seen that? You know that that's not going to lead to anything good, but yet the people will still go ahead and do it. Well, you know, that is a horror trope. In the horror genre, people intentionally get themselves into a situation where they're going to be in trouble. So I think most players are going to be okay, and I think that by the end of this, the players are going to be like, okay, well, that was quite amazing. I'm glad. So the adventure has 2 endings. The first one is for if you just want to run this adventure on its own, but the second one if you want to continue into the roots of evil. And you should. So that is From the Shadows. I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Even if you don't play the previous Grand Conjunction adventures, I mean, they are just isolated adventures, don't have nothing to do with anything else. But these 2, though, are really important in the history and the lore of Ravenloft. In 1994, TSR released an updated Ravenloft campaign setting called the Red Box. And it updates the setting due to all the events that happened during Grand Conjunction, which caused a lot of major changes to Ravenloft. In these adventures, you'll be able to experience firsthand exactly what happened, and knowing that you or your players are going to be the reason why Ravenloft ended up the way that it did. Now let's move on to Roots of Evil, which was released in 1993, a year after From the Shadows. So once again, We have a slip-off cover. This one has an extra panel. We have a map of the region of Barovia, a map for Vallaki, Azzalan's crypt lair, which is a massive dungeon on its own. We have level 1, 2, and 3. And then on the inside panel, we have the random encounters chart. And the adventure book is 96 pages, which is a mammoth length adventure for 2nd edition. So it starts off by telling you what happened, the key NPCs. A lot of the who's who of Ravenloft are here: Azzalan, Inajira, Strahd. And then it briefs you on what happened in the previous adventure, just in case you haven't played it. I mean, the most ideal situation is that you would have played From the Shadows and move on to Roots of Evil. So what happened at the end of From the Shadows, if you go with the ending which leads into Roots of Evil, was that Azzalan actually succeeded. But what he did was that because he was impatient, he rushed ahead. Remember, at that point, only the first 4 have been fulfilled in order. So Azzalan went and fulfilled the 6th line. I don't know who wrote the programming of the Domain of Dread, but apparently the 6th line is all you need to do. So Grand Conjunction has been activated, the different domains are now starting to drift apart, and the borders of the domains are separating, and the Dark Lords are free and they're able to leave their domain. Not entirely able to leave Ravenloft as a whole, not yet at least. So at some point in this adventure, Strahd actually finds Azzalan and confronts him. And the 2 biggest names in Ravenloft are caught in a standoff. And once again, there's going to be time travel involved, but instead of being sent back to the day of the wedding, you are being sent to a different time, which was the day that Strahd von Zarovich made a deal with death for his powers. And in this module, you get to visit Castle Ravenloft multiple times. Here is the map again. But eventually you're supposed to go back in time, with the idea being that you're there to prevent Strahd von Zarovich from accepting this power with death. So the reason that you're traveling back in time is actually through a request from Strahd himself. In this adventure, you're kind of working with Azzalan and Strahd as kind of a anti-ally kind of situation. So your characters will go back in time and do whatever that they need to do. There was actually multiple objectives in this, but the canon ending to this adventure is that the player characters will succeed. However, in doing so, they also unintentionally fulfill the 5th line of the Hexad. Now remember how I said that the Hexad needed to be fulfilled in order? Because the last 2 lines are fulfilled out of order, this actually cancelled the entire Grand Conjunction, and both Azzalan and Strahd are stuck in Ravenloft. While it seems like I completely spoiled both of the adventures, I've not really talked about their personal objectives. This is more from a meta storyline perspective, and because Grand Conjunction was such an important event, pretty much every single subsequent Ravenloft product talks about what happened, about the Hexad being fulfilled out of order, about how Grand Conjunction was supposed to be this event which dissolved Ravenloft. So it's not as much of a spoiler as you would think. Now, as a result of the Grand Conjunction happening, this was TSR's excuse to rewrite the setting, and they removed some of the domains which they didn't really like very much and introduced new ones. They moved some of the domains around. There's essentially a giant country-sized hole in the middle of the landmass called the Core, where most of the domains are located. I think that that's called the Shadow Rift. If you compare the 2 Ravenloft campaign settings, the black box and the red box, you're going to see that the shape of the land is going to be different. There's going to be different domains included in both products, and the red box does talk about Grand Conjunction. And fun fact, I did actually own the red box when I was a teenager. It was the 2nd campaign settings box that I bought after Planescape. And this is the reason why I know a little bit more about the lore of Ravenloft. So anyway, that's enough ranting, and that was Root of Evil. I highly recommend anybody who's interested in Ravenloft to look at both of these adventure modules. And I would say that probably the people who get the most out of these adventures would be 5e players who's only played Curse of Strahd. You're introducing them to other domains. You're giving the players 2 extra opportunities to explore and interact with the past of Strahd. You're introducing Strahd's nemesis Azzalan, who's also a compelling character himself as well. And as an extra bonus, you might convert some 5e players to 2nd edition. There's to hoping. So we have some 4th edition books in this package. Let's take a look at this one first, called the Demononicon. This book was released in 2010, and as the back of the book says, let loose the hordes of the abyss. So in 4th edition, they used what's called the World Access Cosmology, which is different to the Great Wheel Cosmology of 2nd edition and the World Tree Cosmology of 3rd edition. So in the World Access Cosmology of 4th edition, they had the plane above, which was the Astral Sea, and the plane below, which was the Elemental Chaos. And the Abyss, which previously was an outer plane in the Great Wheel Cosmology, fits within the Elemental Chaos of 4th edition. So the aim of this book is to give us the updated lore when it comes to demons. We have a section here where it says from the Demononicon of Igwilv. Igwilv is the alter ego of Tasha, and she knows a great deal about demons as she has an on-again, off-again romantic relationship with the demon prince Gazza. And during the 4th edition era in the dungeon magazines, they would actually have this reoccurring column called From the Demononicon of Igwilv. So this book sets out to give us the updated lore, the physiology, the ecology of demons as it pertains to the updated cosmology of 4th edition. And here we have a map of the Plane of Thousand Portals, the first layer of the Abyss, which was also known as the Plane of Infinite Portals in 2nd edition, also known as Pazunia in 3rd edition. So this map is actually quite nicely drawn, but you can also see that Plaguemort, formerly the gate town to the Abyss, in 2nd edition is on the map, which implies that Plaguemort was pulled into the Abyss as of 4th edition. I recently did a video review of the 2nd edition Planescape adventure module called Well of Worlds, where I talk quite a bit about Plaguemort. So if you're interested in learning more about Plaguemort and how you can use it to enhance your adventure, I will link the video here for you. So the book is now going through the different locations on this layer. We have about half a page of information on Plaguemort and some of the other locales in the pits of Pazunia. And then we have the Blood Rift. I have to say, even though I'm not a huge fan of 4th edition, the artwork that's presented in this book is really nice. I'm pretty sure that Blood Rift is a new location because I've never heard of it before, and I know Planescape pretty well. And I like that this book gives you the map of these regions and the write-up of the surrounding areas, and then also gives you some rumors as well as adventure hooks so that you can go and craft your own adventure. If there are any locations that I like in 4th edition, it will be pretty easy to convert it back to 2nd if I want to use in my Planescape games. And that's one of the reasons why I buy the 4th edition books, just to farm it for ideas, because even if I'm not a big fan of the mechanics in 4th, lore, flavor, and inspiration are all universal and can be used for any system, any game. Although having a quick look at the write-up, it seems like that they placed the Wasting Tower King Owen, and in 2nd edition the Wasting Power actually existed on the Grey Waste, on the layer called Oenos. I mean, that is what the name refers to. And the next section is Azagrat, which is ruled by the demon prince Gazza, who I mentioned earlier has an on-again, off-again relationship with Igwilv, also known as Tasha. So Azagrat has always been a triple realm, meaning that it took up 3 layers of the Abyss, the 45th, 46th, and 47th. There is Zelatar, the Viper Tree Forest. There was a 2nd edition adventure called For Duty and Deity, which was marketed as a Forgotten Realms adventure, but it was also a crossover adventure with Planescape. And that adventure took place in Azagrat. Azagrat also got given a lot of expansion in 3rd edition in the Fiendish Codex Volume 1. So in this book, Azagrat was only given about 6 pages, although I will say that this is probably the best version of the map of Azagrat that I have seen. Then there's the Iron Wastes, Abysm, and another fantastic looking map for the Gaping Maw. Given that the Abyss has infinite number of layers, there is no such thing as too much content for this plane. So I'm quite happy that they've done some expansion on this plane and not just treading over old ground. And here we have some artwork of the Demon Prince Gazza and Igwilv, along with a list of known Abyss layers. Some of these are covered in previous editions, as well as a lord who is the ruler of that layer. Then it goes into talking about the portals and planar pathways, and however that you travel in 4th edition. And here we have some artwork for the Wasting Tower Kin Owen that I just mentioned previously, formerly located on the Grey Waste. We'll have to say that this is an amazing piece of artwork. There's some interior artwork along with encounters, obviously written for 4th edition. We have the stat block for Shmeshka, who was an Arcana-Loth who lives in Sigil. Any Planescape veteran should recognize the name, although it seems like her lore has been changed in 4th edition. There is the Mouth of Demogorgon. And then we move on to chapter 3, which goes through the different demons and their stat blocks, as well as their lore. There are some classics like the Ammonite and the Bulezol, but also some new ones like Clockwork Horror. There seems to be quite a few new demons that are introduced in this book, and I'm not mad about it, and the artwork's actually quite nice too. I would love it if some of these new ones are converted back to 2nd edition. The Nabazu is quite deadly, and then there's Pazuzu, which is a demon prince, Pisco Demon, Bratakin, Seabriex. This piece of artwork is quite astonishing but also disturbing at the same time. Zaktmoy, the Demon Queen of Fungi. And that's the end. It actually spent quite a large chunk of this book on monster entries. Some of them are new. So overall, as far as 4th edition is concerned, I actually quite like this book. And then we have Open Grave, Secrets of the Undead. This book was released in 2009, and I believe it does something that's similar to the Demononicon, except this is for undead. There was a book released during the 3rd edition era called Libris Mortis, which was supposed to be an ecology and lore book on the undead, but most of that book ended up being monster stats and new game mechanics and new classes and new feats and features and that kind of stuff. So let's see if this book fares any better. So it starts with their biology, essential organs, circulatory systems, digestive systems. There's some provocative artwork here about their biology. And then it goes into psychology, which is only a couple of pages long, the society. And then we move on to the Shadowfell, and it talks about Orcus and the Raven Queen. So the ecology section is super short. It's about the same size as the 3rd edition, so right now it's about the same. And the book now talks about the different types of campaigns that you can do with the stories in relation to undead. Some new magic items, Sword of Kars. I believe Kars was a lieutenant of Vecna and they hated each other. And the Sword of Kars was an artifact back in 2nd edition. And then it goes into the undead lairs. Here's some maps for the graveyard of Kolfen. Sandy Catacombs. So these look like pre-made lairs and dungeons that you can insert into your own game with pre-made maps and locations and encounters already done for you. The Blood Tower. So there are quite a few of these pre-made dungeons and pre-made lairs. I think the fact that everything started out using 4th edition and obviously created using 4th edition encounter design limits the appeal of these dungeons. Like you will almost have to rebuild these encounters from the ground up if you're going to use it for any other editions. So I guess you might as well just create everything yourself. So I've heard about this section. So you may or may not know that when a god dies, their corpse will float in the astral plane, or in 4th edition's terms, the astral sea. And this is a dungeon which takes place inside the body of a dead god. And I think this is a really creative idea. You can start the players inside the dungeon, and everything, the walls, the tunnels, have this more of a fleshy type of texture. And then when they finally make their way out of the dungeon, they realize that they were inside this floating corpse. I'm telling you, that's definitely going to blow their mind. That's definitely the best dungeon included in this book. So there are new monsters. The Undead Beholder. There is the Brain in a Jar, and I believe I've seen this in the Ravenloft Monstrous Compendium in 2nd edition. Death Tritus, Forsaken Shell. Ghosts, that's hardly new. Ghouls. The Death Touched Golem. Some of these are quite creative. We have the Cadaver Golem, the Grave Dirt Golem, Tombstone Golem, Hangman Golem, Larva Undead, the Mummy. It's a nice piece of artwork. There is the Oni of Japanese origin. Nowadays, Oni is also what they call Ogre Mages in 5th edition, so if you're going to be running an Oni, you need to be very specific in telling your players which type of Oni that you meant. Oozes, including the Spirit Ooze. That's a very interesting idea. Undead Aviary. Okay, so there are some fairly original monsters in here, and the artwork is also quite nice as well. And there's something that I like about 4th edition is that you can use the same monster but at different challenge ratings. For example, you have a Wraith that can be used at level 2, level 8, and level 13. So I like that about 4th edition. The encounters can be quite flexible due to monsters having varying levels of strength, so you can actually be quite flexible about what monsters to use when. And now we have some infamous undead monsters, including Asirarak, the villain from the original Tomb of Horrors. I don't know this guy. Kars the Betrayer. As I mentioned earlier, he was Vecna's lieutenant. Caius, the name sounds familiar but I don't recall. Osterneth, the Bronze Lich, and of course Strahd von Zarovich. And then Vecna. And then the last part of the book gives you some templates to create your own monsters. And then there are some alternative powers just in case you want to mix it up a little bit. And that's the end. Not a bad book, although I will say the Demononicon was definitely more entertaining for me. And the last 4th edition product that we're going to cover today is the Dungeon Tiles Master Set, The Dungeon, part of the Essentials line. Now this is quite a big box. It is as big as the 2nd edition box sets, maybe a little bit bigger. So the cover is a slipcase and it slides out with a box on the inside with a lid. So sellers really taking care to protect this product and put some bubble wrap on the inside. Now these are dungeon tiles and they are double-sided. So I think originally they would have actually been in pieces of cardboard and you would have just had to break these pieces off. And you have a set of dungeon tiles that you can use to make your own custom dungeons of different sizes and shapes. So I have played 4th edition and I remember the DM that I had at the time used something like this. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same set, but it looks very familiar. So 4th edition was designed to be played with miniatures and with the dungeon tiles. And some of the adventures would actually come with a poster map that would have the battle map. And the abilities in 4th edition were also quite strategy based. It will make references to like adjacent tiles or abilities that will hit like a certain shaped area of effect. So I would say it's almost mandatory to have tiles to play 4th edition. So this set comes with a lot of different pieces of different sizes and shapes, but they all feature this bland grey tile. So I guess the idea is that this is just supposed to be a generic dungeon set. However, creative DMs will be able to spice it up and use your imagination and just describe the rooms in a certain flourish. I mean, that is D&D after all. Everything is inside your imagination. It is just a game of make-believe. Hey, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Did you get any D&D related presents this year? If so, let me know down in the comments. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas and hope we get to hang out again in the new year.